Poverty and hardship run rampant through the modern world, both in developed and underdeveloped nations. The grind to put a roof over our head and food on the table comes easily only to certain privileged populations. To those people dealt an unfavorable hand at birth, they're forced to turn to alternative means of income. Since the birth of the internet, there's a new multi-billion-dollar industry staking its claim in the game. In 2020, online scammers milked over $304 million from vulnerable Americans, and that was just in romance scams alone. While online scammers exist all over the world, for some reason, a good amount of them originate from Nigeria. As the cartels are synonymous with Mexico, online scammers in Nigeria go together like bread and butter. But why? And why are these online scammers treated like rock stars? The answer is based on many different factors. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, and also the continent's biggest economy. However, as of 2019, roughly 40% of Nigerians live below the poverty line, making $360 a year. Smartphone use is still considered a luxury. Currently, only around 10 to 20% of the population is using a smartphone. Those equipped with the power of a supercomputer in their hand and the need for better sources of income means that many Nigerian men turn to online scams as a means to support their families. To mask themselves, scammers will hide their IP addresses and route their connection through multiple different servers. This makes them tough to track. This is in addition to using fake personas. Most scammers really only have to hide from the FBI. The vast majority are too small for the local government to care, as they have more pressing issues on hand. The money scammers can rake in far exceeds anything they'd be able to make with an honest day's work. The same can be said for anybody choosing a life of crime. Scammers, especially Nigerian professionals, are treated like stars in their hometowns and villages. And it's not like the scammers don't not get jail time in their own respective countries. Yet, this doesn't stop people from going into the industry, nor does it stop the younger generation from looking up to them like rock stars. Nigerians first achieved notoriety in the early 1990s for scamming Westerners out of millions of dollars. The scams became known as 419, which is named after the section of the Nigerian Penal Code that goes after this type of specific crime. The first wave of Nigerian 419 scammers were mostly uneducated criminals. The next group consisted of young, educated men. But here was the root of the problem. Even though they were highly educated, there just wasn't enough formal jobs to go around back then. Those young men were caught in an economy that was ruined by a series of military dictatorships and years of mismanagement. And with their backs up against the wall, they made the choice of going into crime. It was that or starve. They noticed the uneducated scammers racking up the cash and decided to join them. And of course, the scammers lived it up since they're rich. So it's not that different than westernized American kids growing up seeing rap stars and YouTubers and wanting to be like them. In Nigeria, the 419 scammers were their versions. The younger generation today in Nigeria don't have quite the same economic environment, nor do they have as much pressure, but their parents and those in between still harbor that same mindset. The scams are still going today, and it's a big industry. For example, in the summer of 2019, the FBI busted one of their biggest online scam cases that amounted to over $46 million that scammers tried to steal. Many of these scammers were Nigerian, and they operated in the U.S. They posed as other legitimate business vendors in order to get actual businesses to send them money with fake invoices. This type of scam is known as business email compromise scams. These business scams have become so rampant that in the first 7 months of 2019 alone, the FBI received almost 14,000 complaints reporting BEC scams with a total loss of around $1.1 billion. That amount matched the losses reported for all of 2018. In another recent high-profile case, the FBI arrested Nigerian Obinwane Okeke in an $11 million BEC fraud case. Before his arrest, Okeke had posed as a successful entrepreneur. He was even featured on a Forbes 30 Under 30 list as being a contributor on Forbes. Online scams have been rapidly increasing in general. It's not just businesses losing money, it's individuals too. Although businesses are the big fish, according to the Federal Trade Commission, people have reported losing more money on romance scams than any other fraud type for 3 years running. In 2020, reported loss of romance scams reached a record of $304 million. That figure is up a whopping 50% from 2019. And that's just the money we know about. There are plenty of people out there who don't want to admit they were scammed. The average victim of an online romance scam will be scammed out of roughly $2,500 throughout their fake relationship. Many of us hear about these online scams and think, that would never happen to me. Odds are, it probably won't, but you may not be the target. Scammers know they can't get you, so they're not even willing to try. Instead, they set their sights on the most vulnerable. What happened in 2020 to make romance scams especially tantalizing? An obvious reason is the pandemic. It limited our ability to meet in person. Many people who didn't use dating apps before hopped online, and romance scammers took this opportunity to take full advantage of these people. They fabricate attractive online profiles to draw people in, often lifting pictures from the web and using made-up names. Some scammers go the extra step and actually assume the identities of real people. The pandemic has made lives easier for scammers because it makes not meeting up make sense. The pandemic inspired new twists to scammer stories. As an example, many scammers quote-unquote canceled first date plans because of a supposed positive COVID test. Scammers primarily target the older men and women looking for love, basically anyone in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. Unfortunately, this demographic tends to cling to the first signs of affection. Many people are recently divorced and don't understand the online dating environment, so they don't know what's usual and what's unusual. Suddenly, an attractive partner on the other side of a computer screen starts giving them a lot of attention, and it makes them feel good. They tell them what they want to hear and make them believe every word. And these targets want to make the other side happy too. In 2020, reports of gift cards being used to send money to romance scammers increased by nearly 70%. Gift cards, along with wire transfers, are the most frequently reported payment methods for romance scams. Reports of money lost on romance scams increased for every age group in 2020. Interestingly, people ages 20 to 29 actually saw the biggest increase, with the number of reports more than doubling from 2019. However, people from 40 to 69 were once again the most likely to report losing money to romance scams. And who gives out the money? People 70 and older reported the highest individual median losses at $9,475. Scammers aren't just making things up off the top of their heads. They're following an elaborate playbook constructed and edited over years of practice from the most sophisticated scammers. They have branching scripts to follow depending on the answers they receive from their prey. The playbook that they follow lays out step by step how to manipulate and control vulnerable people by steering the conversation down specific paths at specific moments. For example, the playbook includes a long list of greetings and flirty one-liners. Most of them come off as a little corny, but someone looking for love might be blind to it. Once they have their target on the hook, scammers begin to send longer messages. For example, sometimes they actually play the victim. They talk about how horrible their experience has been and how tough it's been for them to make a genuine connection. This further helps to reinforce that the quote-unquote connection they have with the target is real. They give the impression of putting the power in the target's hands. In reality, they're in control the entire time. And this is where something unfortunate happens to them. They begin asking for money. However, it's money that will be mutually beneficial. For example, they'll claim to need a new phone so they can keep talking to the target. Playbooks are needed because it's really a numbers game. They need to recruit members into the organization to keep pumping out the scams. Pyramid scheme-like rackets exist all over Nigeria. Professionals recruit young workers as a way to build their criminal organization. They're trained by high-level scammers and receive a percentage of the money they bring in. For example, one scammer might have 10 workers underneath him. That scammer at the top will receive 10% of everything their workers can siphon off their victims. According to one lifelong scammer, the conversion rate is about 10%. Supposedly, around 1 in 10 people willingly surrender money. All it takes is that first dollar for the floodgates to open, and it always starts small. A small amount to cover an emergency small bill, money that's easily parted with, and that's when the floodgates open for the scammer. But of course, not everyone wants to be a scammer. The high-profile arrests have gotten extreme reactions for the Nigerians who don't commit crimes. Many of them have to bear the cost of the stereotyping that comes with the online scamming of their fellow countrymen. These costs range from increased scrutiny for visa processes to a lack of trust when attempting to do business internationally. Oftentimes, Nigerians are restricted from using international payment platforms, or they have to go through intense rounds of verification. Criminals such as Al Capone and Pablo Escobar were looked up and admired in their respective times. Although they were known criminals, they often helped the poorest members of their communities. The same can be said for Nigerian scammers. For example, Ramon Abbas, aka Hush Puppy, is currently considered the Pablo Escobar of Nigerian internet scammers. In early 2020, he was indicted in the U.S. connected with a North Korean cyber heist valued at $14.7 million. In February of 2021, Abbas was connected to another group of North Korean military hackers aimed to extort more than $1.3 billion in cash and cryptocurrency from multiple financial institutions and companies. Find out more about his downfall in this video here. While many Nigerian scammers don't live quite as lavishly as Hush Puppy, they do flaunt their wealth with large parties, fancy clothes, and fast cars. Many young Nigerians look up to these scammers and envy their lavish lifestyles. They aim to live the same way, and for many young Nigerians, that road leads to online scams. Here's what's next.